YouTube is a place where people from all walks of life can come together and express themselves online. Whether you're a child or a pedophile, a drag queen or an incel, a black transgender Muslim or a skinhead white supremacist, everybody comes to YouTube as a place where creators and their audiences can connect and spread viewpoints, information, love, hate, vindictive jealousy, targeted harassment, joy, excitement, racism, SJW propaganda, conspiracy theories, comedy, entertainment, and boring, cringy garbage. That's what happens when you give a content creation platform to the masses. It becomes very multifaceted. The trouble comes from the need to decide what can and can't be monetized, or allowed to be published in the first place. The trouble comes from when guidelines are randomly enforced, when definitions are inconsistently applied, when broad categorizations can be skewed in either direction. When the rules are seemingly incapable of being concise, it breeds frustration. Who defines hate speech? Who defines conspiracy theory? Who defines bullying or harassment? And on what authority? And how responsible will they ultimately be with the power to deplatform, demonetize, and demonize others? A person's revenue stream can be cut off. Their ability to make money can be gone in the blink of an eye. Their audience can fracture and dissipate without warning, and all because somebody at YouTube decided to play it safe with advertisers after receiving a few angry emails from professional whiners. YouTube doesn't give you warning. You either wake up to find your account terminated, or they give you a little blurb like, hey, we demonetized your whole channel. Here's a list of contritions you have to make to fix it. If you have any questions, please ask Twitter, because we're not available. Everyone has heard by now about the Vox journalist who went after the conservative comedian and political commentator because the commentator would continuously make rebuttal segments on his channel debunking the Vox journalist's shit, and while doing so would call the Vox journalist, who is a gay Mexican, a bunch of insulting identity-related names in the process. So just in time for Pride Month, the Vox journalist picked up the victimhood megaphone and shouted up a campaign to get the conservative comedian deplatformed for videos that weren't even recently uploaded, trying to start a movement that would have a ripple effect in changing YouTube's policies to make it easier to deplatform other people he didn't like. Ultimately, the comedian's channel was demonetized, which the Vox journalist wasn't satisfied with, and this is still an ongoing issue, as YouTube's response to this whole situation has been a shoe store full of flip-flops. First, they said the content didn't violate the policies, then they said they demonetized his whole channel anyway, then they said he'd only need to remove links to offensive merchandise, then they said actually he has to address more of the content of his channel, and then they rolled out some new same-day guidelines designed to root out hate speech and white supremacy that mostly just ended up getting a bunch of Nazi history channels deleted. YouTube always lands the triple backflip flawlessly. Here's the deal. The progressive mob only works because YouTube lets it work, and YouTube only lets it work because advertisers let it work, and advertisers only let it work because other advertisers let it work, and other advertisers only let it work because they're afraid of losing like 2% of their revenue. If companies just held their ground, boycotts wouldn't do shit. They'd make a lot of noise until they ran out of steam and things would go on as before. But instead, they all play kiss-ass with offended extremists and cater to the most psycho group of people that can lobby 100 signatures on a petition. This Vox journalist is an avowed advocate of deplatforming wrongthink, which is code for whatever he thinks is Nazism or white supremacy, which is code for the entire conservative side of politics. He's also a self-professed fan of milkshaking people, which is the act of throwing milkshakes at public figures you disagree with, because, you know, speech is violence, but hurling objects at people isn't. I'm sure there's no chance this is a coordinated PR stunt to distract from the news that Vox's employees had recently unionized and were demanding better pay and benefits, even having staged walkouts. Those negotiations have come to an end, and while they technically succeeded in the workers' favor, it's pretty hard to raise the salaries of 300 people when the company can't afford to pay them. Enjoy the resulting layoffs, drinks are on you. You think I'm glossing over some details? Let's dive in that shit then. This Vox journalist was made fun of on a comedian's channel. He was called mean and hurtful names. Names like queer and lispy queer and gay Mexican. Ugh, if you're a gay Mexican, being called a gay Mexican must be very demeaning. This dude has even publicly laughed off these very insults in the past and claims to have thick skin. So why the sudden change? Well, I already laid that out. As if this dude stays up late at night crying over being called a queer by a fucking Canadian comic. Get out of here. This was a planned stunt and a golden opportunity to advance the agenda and detract from some bad PR in one fell swoop. Don't you dare call him a victim. But he's being bullied. What is this, 4th grade? This man is an adult. Despite his act, he can handle it. Also, don't you have to bully someone, like, at them? The only reason the Vox journalist knows what's in the videos is because someone directed them to him and shoved his nose in it. Is talking behind someone's back bullying now? These videos are recorded gossip. Not that they're meant to be private, but there's a difference between shooting someone directly and shooting someone who was just tossed in front of your gun. Think of how many fucking names every late-night host has called Donald Trump. Racist, ageist, sizist names. There are hundreds. Is that bullying too then? Those videos are on YouTube as well. You want to apply some similar standards? They're both public figures. They both make criticizable content. A major difference is that Trump has been called far worse names, and you can't dispute that shit no matter how dense you are. If it's all about following private company YouTube's free market terms and guidelines, all the buzzwords people throw out like it ends the argument, then let's see some good old-fashioned progressive contrition. Nah, but when the left does it, it's called speaking truth to power and fighting the fascists. If progressives got rid of race-based bullying and dehumanization, there'd be no content left to police, and YouTube would become a haven for traditional liberals, conservatives, and centrists to live in peace and harmony. Allow me to answer the inevitable question people will ask without realizing it's a false premise. What's wrong with YouTube wanting to get rid of white supremacist content? False premise, because it's not about actual white supremacist content now, is it? That shit accounts for 5% of this conversation. The most popular conservative channel on YouTube, the comedian commentator in question, is not a white supremacist, not a racist, not a homophobe, just a dude making mean jokes. And if you don't like mean jokes, you're free to be a little bitch about it, but it's super annoying and I wish you wouldn't. What you shouldn't be free to do is be a little bitch in a way that threatens creators' livelihoods, because although the comedian has so far made it through with minimal damages, mostly due to his own safeguards and the revenue he can make elsewhere, things could go very differently. If you're willing to get people fired from their jobs for disagreeing with you, or even straight up bullying you, consider the fact that maybe you're an asshole, because compare what it costs you to what it would cost them. What does it cost you to ignore videos you don't have to watch or even know exist versus completely severing someone else's finances depending on the situation? This is not about actual white supremacy. It never was and it never will be. It's about taking out the competition. How many legit white supremacist channels even are there? No one knows because they aren't popular. I've never seen one. White supremacy isn't fucking popular, you guys. Hardly the backbone of our country. The fact that we're even discussing white supremacy and hate speech in the same breath as this recent controversy is an example of the left's goal to associate all conservative thought with racist, fascist, homophobic bigotry. Guilt by association is a favorite tool of theirs, and it works. A couple years ago, when I was still apolitical and had never seen a conservative express a viewpoint before, I didn't think there was much, if any, difference between the Ben Shapiros and Richard Spencers of the world, because the media always treats them as the same side of a coin, yet I expect they aren't too keen on far-right people having a notion that Louis Farrakhan and Obama are cut from the same cloth. Both sides have extremists, both sides have ridiculous charlatans that aren't meant to be taken seriously. This conservative comedian is a clown by definition, but he's not a bigot. You don't have to like him, or approve of him, or even tolerate him, as long as your intolerance manifests in a change of your personal viewing habits, rather than a campaign to get him booted out of your peripheral vision. If you don't want to see something, look somewhere else. Deal with your own feelings. They're your feelings, and nobody else should be burdened with them. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino, and I'll see you guys next time.